This is something that has huge economic consequences, and to the extent where they just choose to be dismissive is very disappointing. But let me show you why Olamide's speech was actually genius, right? So Olamide basically tells you about two things. First, he distinguishes between what safety nets are and what rights are, and then clearly he shows you how safety nets are predicated upon conditionality and how rights should be universal. First, Hawa agrees to this and says, yes, if it's a right, everybody should have access to it, both rich and poor. Then Tayo comes and says, no, if it's a right, we can say some individuals should not have access to it, it should be nuanced. That's tension on their side. But regardless, we're going to engage all angles, all ramifications, right? So what's the most important thing Olamide tells you? Olamide tells you about the economics of the thing, right? Because recognize that ultimately their own parameters for who wins this debate is very simple. One, they say the welfare of the state is supreme. By their own parameters, we are going to beat them silly. The welfare of the state is supreme to the extent where the economics jeopardizes the welfare of the state, as Olamide clearly shows you. Then clearly this is not maximizing the welfare of the state, so you are violating that supreme moral ethos. That's the first thing. Secondly, they tell you that inadequate resources is a valid response. So basically, every fucking poor country in the world, is allowed not to make this a right? So South Sudan and many other poor countries. But no, Howard then tells you that no, poor countries can afford this. It's just because they don't want to prioritize this. So ultimately, we get an analysis about how a very resource poor country that does not have a huge industrial base that they can tax, that does not have huge manufacturing capacity or any huge export industry, basically a poor country economically can ultimately generate monies. Olamide tells you that you have to tax individuals. How is a country like Zimbabwe, for example, going to tax individuals when it does not have the manufacturing base? He tells you that you have to be resource rich and have a small population like Qatar and Saudi Arabia. How do the majority of countries in West Africa like Benin Republic and Togo, ultimately, who are resource poor countries with larger populations that they can handle, fit into that category? Thirdly, fuck that shit, man. Ultimately, it's very clear that all the things Olamide tells you on that level is unresponded to. The majority of countries do not apply. So their kumbaya notion about how if you believe you would achieve is just motivational bullshit and does not apply. It's very telling that in an economics debate, we get zero economics from this side. All they want to tell you is principles. They say we are being pragmatic. We are very proud to be so, because this is an actual matter about existentiality, right? How does the state continue to exist if it implements a policy that jeopardizes it, that condemns even more people to poverty, that basically destroys its economic productivity? Is that a good thing to do? That is what this debate is about. So it's very, very pragmatic, and we're proud to be so. Sit, Tayo, sit. Two things in addition, right? I'm going to be talking about why conditionality is a prerequisite for all government interventions in like interpersonal relations. I'll shorten this out later and you get it. Secondly, I'm going to be showing how if a thing is a right and it neutralizes your other rights, then it cannot exist. So rights ought to not be internally contradictory. Many Greek philosophers have spoken about how a virtuous thing cannot have an opposite. So two opposite things cannot be virtuous. So to the extent where you think this is a good thing because it gives you some level of rights, if we can show, and we have already done an Olamide speech, but I'm going to show you in a sec, if we can show that implementing this thing as a right ultimately neutralizes all your other rights, then we win this debate hands down. Because a thing that violates other rights in the same individual cannot then be a right. It is internally contradictory. That fails. Sit, guys. Sit. So let's talk about conditionality and why safety net is what applies here. Safety net basically means conditionality. Tayo says, yes, it ought to be conditional, it ought to be nuanced, it ought to be some individuals who deserve it, who need it, that get it. How is this in violation of their case? First, rights ought to be universal, but beyond that, you have to realize that the other things that are applicable to this, things like tax holidays, things like tax incentives, things like other benefits that governments give selectively, are often things that are conditional. When government interacts with individuals, like taking you to jail and taking away some of your rights, those things are conditional. You go to jail and lose your rights because you violate the principle of the state. So when the state interacts with most individuals and imputes conditionality upon those things, it is because what you have in that sort of instance, it is not a right that you have to that thing, right? So ultimately, conditionality where it exists violates a thing as a right. That's the bottom line that I'm speaking about, right? If the government says we can only give you a thing upon certain conditions, then that thing is not a right. It is not inalienable. It's not something that you have inalienable access to. So Tayo basically contradicts Hawa and they fall out of this debate for that simple reason, because they want to make it conditional, which is the same definition we've already given in Olamide's speech about safety nets. Right. So ultimately, how does this neutralize the other rights? I'll take you. Sit. How does this neutralize the other rights? Olamide gives you 5 analyses on the economic front. Quick recap. First, he tells you about the inefficient resource allocation, because you must realize that if the true debate we're having here is making this a right, thus making it universal, then the government has an obligation not just to make it universal, but to provide universal quality for every individual. It is poor resource allocation to the extent where individuals can provide great quality for themselves, but in the presence of a free alternative, why would they do so? Like, why would any sensible rich individual want to spend money when they can get highly qualitative service from the government. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So in that sort of instance, those individuals do not patronize the private sector. This stifles innovation. This ultimately destroys the industry, because if you are an individual, for example, who makes money by building houses, let's say you're a contractor, right, and government says everybody has a right to free housing and provide houses for everybody, you become a poor man overnight, even though now government has given you a free house, which you probably did not need because you could have afforded it anyways. It has destroyed your industry in a bid of providing you welfare. The government makes you poorer. Hawa is primarily concerned about capitalism and its destructive consequence. What is more destructive than the destruction of the industrial base of a country? That is why this is contradictory, right? But beyond that, Olamide also told you that it stifles economic productivity. It creates a class of freeloaders. This is very important, and this is something that the Faithfulness have been trying to flag, right? Why is a class of freeloaders very problematic? If you live in a country where you can get all of your basic needs met by the government, to what extent do you need to put additional effort to gain anything? Why should you wait? Take POI, Tyler, go.
All right. See, if we say rights are universal, it doesn't mean that in allocation of resources we cannot prioritize. These things are not mutually
Sit, rights are not things you prioritize. Sit. If an individual is entitled to a right to justice, you do not prioritize some individuals in the same state to a right to justice. How does this fucking make any sense? That you say you prioritize some individuals? The inequality or asymmetry in distribution of rights is itself a fundamental contradiction of that thing. It's the reason why we call certain systems oppressive. If rich people have better systems than poor individuals, and you say all of them have rights to those systems, then that system is an oppressive one. We are very, very surprised at this analysis from Tayo. Ultimately, right, let us analyze who wins this debate. It's very simple. We agree that the welfare of the state is the supreme ethos. Something that destroys the economy, that makes everybody poorer, that takes individuals who are currently very rich and industrialists and makes them dependent on welfare, that incentivizes unproductivity, that gives freeloaders all of the benefits that they ought to ordinarily have worked for. That is not something that is, in the benefit of the state. Unless you are a Qatar or a Saudi Arabia that has excess money, which will probably run out because in time population will increase and all of these other problems will develop. No other country can sustain this, not the United States of America, not any other poor country. And we are very, very sad that in a debate that has to do with economic existential realities, we are getting principled bullshit from government.
I'm